Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with the Ages of Apocalypse. Last week we saw the formation of the X-Men and Brotherhood of Mutants just a wee bit differently. Time was altered by Apocalypse after he unexpectedly merged with Cyclops, and then he exploded, returning the reality to normal. But why should that stop us from seeing other tweaks to reality? Let's continue with Cable number 77. The cover appears to be set in a desert, with the title character in the foreground probably getting why Anakin Skywalker hated sand so much, Magneto, and beside him riding a camel, Sunfire looking an awful lot like his Age of Apocalypse counterpart, as there seems to be strong winds blowing about. His all-mutant remake of Lawrence of Arabia would not do very well at the box office. Written by Joe Pruitt, with art by Bernard Chang, Andy Owens, Rod Ramos, and Hi-Fi Designs, we begin in Egypt, narration saying that the country has not only regained its former dominance, it has conquered 3 continents and counting, and more to follow. There's one man choosing to fight the tyrant behind it all, regardless of the odds.
How about Chuck Norris with a BB gun?
The chosen one, of course, is Cable, whom the narration says is living with his failure to stop an immortal evil from conquering the planet. He and some others are fighting the evil one's forces, Nate himself feeling truly alive in the heat of battle as he knocks one opponent down and telekinetically thrashes another. The funny thing is, this fight actually started because Cable was accused of using his powers to win an arm wrestling match. The biggest tip-off is that he didn't actually use his hands. Another enemy warrior almost gets the drop on him, but the Ascani-san is saved by Aliyah, his deceased wife. Given how often dead characters come back in comics, this probably would have been normal even if Cyclopolis hadn't been mucking with reality. She chides how distracted he gets, requiring her to save him as if he forgot there's a war going on. He flirts that she's the distraction because he loves her so much, and Aliyah says they need to get back to fighting, as they begin making out. Wow, some women really do send mixed signals. Eventually, the fighting stops, neither side winning, and the battle more pause to mourn their losses. Cable wants to bury their dead quickly, and with only as many men as needed, while everyone else prepares to evacuate the encampment. Figuring the enemy has sized up their strength and will counterattack with enough numbers to finish them off, he wants to take the offensive, when their foes least expect it. Aliyah wants to wait until reinforcements arrive, and Charles Xavier says they're both right. Way to contribute, Chuck. He adds that their aid of additional fighters is guaranteed, they need only wait for their arrival. And it just so happens that Bobby Drake has news on that front. A quartet of former students of Nathan's, Sync, Cannonball, M, and Warpath. He's glad to have the help, but was hoping for more than just a handful of familiar faces. Hey, it's your own fault for only relying on Craigslist, dude. Actually, these 4 are just the scouting party, arriving a few minutes ahead of a much larger army led by Magneto, Storm, and Sunfire, each riding horses that color coordinate with their looks. Since they decided to kill the dramatic tension of waiting for backup, they replaced it with a dramatic entrance. Narration offers brief exposition about each leader, Ororo having left the X-Men and now commanding Kenya's underground resistance, Sunfire, a former enemy, and Magneto, ruler of Genosha, which is second in power only to the Pharaoh they seek to defeat, as well as someone with whom Cable has an unspoken personal grudge against. Regardless, since he's a soldier, he'll still cover his red-armored backside so long as they fight the same cause. Meanwhile, a warrior is groveling before the Pharaoh, the living monolith, blaming their losses on their enemy's savagery and unnatural might. And every time we shot them with lasers, they said they had laser-proof armor, and I totally hit that one guy, but he didn't fall down like he was supposed to. They cheated. However, Monolith expected this outcome, and even welcomes it, as it forces Cable to attack soon with his reinforcements, offering the chance to end the rebellion and slave anyone that catches his tyrannical eye. Let's see. I don't have that kind of slave, or that kind of slave. Ooh, I need that for a slave. I've already got 3 of those slaves, but none of them have that cool armor. Standing behind his throne is a figure with energy emanating from his oblong eye. Probably not relevant to the story. A little later, Cable and Aliyah are 3 kilometers from their target. with plans to launch a frontal assault to pose as their entire force, while their backup flanks unnoticed from the rear. Nate begins questioning the state of things, like the war, the world, everything except his love for his wife. She feels it's best not to question what's beyond their control, for fear of what answers it might bring, and suggests they return to the others. They meet up with Ororo and the rest, all ready to head into battle at Nathan's command. They'll either end the Pharaoh's stranglehold on the planet, or die trying.
And if it motivates any of you further, we can go out for shawarma like the end credits scene in Avengers.
An hour later, Nathan and Cannonball have taken out a couple guards and signaled the others. Not sure what the cyborg is doing here. Is he indicating how many goons they just disabled? Anyway, we go right inside the pyramid, not much later, as the commanders are making their way through the catacombs, off-put by the ease of entry and the unnatural silence.
You'd think we'd at least be able to hear the epic battle outside, with the huge explosions, amazing stunts, and crisp CGI. I mean, otherwise, warriors are just sitting out in the desert playing backgammon or something.
They open the doors to the Pharaoh's chamber, where Monolith has been waiting for them, his throne situated beneath a statue of the merged Psych Apocalypse entity. Kinda tacky to put yourself in there like that, isn't it, Apocalypse? Anyway, since his enemies acted just the way he wanted them to, Monolith's soldiers emerge from the darkness, ordered to bring the Chosen Ones to him: Cable, Ororo, Magnus, and Sunfire, while the others are simply killed. Iceman, the other Chosen, will be taken while the soldiers fighting outside will be slaughtered, since Monolith doesn't believe in taking prisoners.
It's not a show of force thing, or even a cruel villain act. I just don't have the space. I decided to convert my dungeon into a display room for all my Funko Pops, and even that wasn't enough. I mean, why else do you think I conquered Europe?
As the rebels are separated between Chosen and not Chosen, Cable notices something familiar about the ones being spared, and something haunting him in regards to Alia, as he seems to see a vision of her death. He hits Monolith with a psi attack, while his compatriots fend off the guards. For all his doubts, Cable thinks running the tyrant through just feels right, you know? However, Livy McMono retaliates with some kind of attack.
I'm not up to date on this villain's powers set, so for all I know, he literally just hit him with a look. Wait a minute. Is the living monolith actually Derek Zoolander?
Shiro and Storm attack, but since their foe is a living conductor, he channels each one's powers back at the other. Magneto begins a dramatic monologue about how Monolith mistakenly eyed Genosha, and after he's taken out, overtaking his empire will aid in realizing Magnus's dream for mutant kind.
It's much less dramatic when he reveals his dream is basically setting up an Arby's franchise.
Monolith grows giant, even enough to break through his pyramid, while boasting of godhood as he grasps Magneto. Nathan, meanwhile, sees Cyclops a few yards away, in a stern posture. "Please, don't make me do this. Don't make me give her up."
Son, I am your father, that is technically somehow younger than you, and you will do as I say. Now sacrifice your wife that's been kinda restored due to reality being toyed with, or so help me, no TV for a week.
Cable then bellows to Monolith that he's no god, just a weak pawn used by a similarly deluded, power-hungry madman, one who sought to go from creation to creator, clearly referring to Apocalypse, who tried to blind Cable by what he desired most, but by denouncing the gargantuan pharaoh, at the cost of his own wife, reality is snapped back to normal. The time-displaced soldier is seemingly alone in the chamber that held him and the other in the 12. Pocky was still able to bend existence to try recreating the circuit of mutant energy in this alternate scenario. The issue ends with Nathan tearfully falling to his knees, aware that his Alia has been gone for years, and wondering how much more will be sacrificed before his old nemesis stays dead.
Now's probably not the time to tell him that eventually Apocalypse starts chilling with the X-Men on a sovereign island where they can just resurrect themselves whenever they want, right? I'm not telling him.
So let me get this out of the way. Was that Age of Apocalypse version Sunfire on the cover supposed to be an empty tease? He never appears like this in the story, so either someone thought this would help sell the issue, or maybe it was just an artist's prerogative. But as for the comic itself, The story works as a means of luring Cable a certain way, giving him his wife back while also indulging his inclinations as a fighter by placing him in this big war for the fate of the planet with an enemy very similar to Apocalypse but not quite. And thus it seems rooted in his history between him and Pocky, which explains why we never see the big fight outside. Though it feels like there's a kind of plot hole in the whole trying to recreate the 12 Circuit thing, since Xavier is probably still at their base camp, and Jean Grey, Lorna Dane, Bishop, and Mikhail Rasputin are nowhere to be seen. And if, like the first part, this was a brief warping of reality, it raises the question of when this takes place in relation to the alternate formation of the X-Men from last week. That story seemed to indicate that Scott's body couldn't handle the powers at work, thus was destroyed, and so reality was returned to normal, whereas Cable's experience ended by talking smack to the surrogate Big Bad.
The issue is fine, nice art, decent pacing, but probably more meaningful for someone that follows the title character. Just kind of felt like filler, more like a spin-off one-shot for a bigger event, even though this isn't really a big event. Anyway, I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.